that you were not well brought up. It is not your fault that you didn't have that father figure. It is not your fault that the father imprint, the father print on you is not the one you expected. But hey, guys, it is your responsibility not to remain that way. And I think this is one of the reasons why we have all this conflict and this argument with our wives. And I want to ask Dami and Othuke. Dami, Lola, you will respond first. Why is it so difficult for men to see that I don't know this thing and they learn? For example, if you call for men programs like this, if you call for meetings, you don't see men. If you're not talking about money, they don't. And that point, Othuke said something that you can't give what you don't have. Is it that they are not aware of what's happening? What's the problem? What do you think is the problem? Yeah, thank you, Daniela.
That's a fantastic question. I remember earlier this year, that was been around February, I put together a webinar for singles. For years, I've done things for couples, and some people reached out to me and they talked about single people and all of that. And so I called a few people together. We put together a webinar called On Stock for singles, exploring the liberties of the single life. And based on our expectations, it was hugely successful. But what I observed was, let's say we had an average attendance of about, I remember we had about an average of maybe about 50, 60 people attend. Less than 10% were men, were guys. Most of them were ladies. And I've seen that, that trend, consistently, that when things are put out that have to do with, family life, whether it's within the spectrum of the single life or, getting ready for marriage, or post-marriage and all of that, even couples counseling, most times, most of the clients that reach out to me are the women, the wives. Gradually, you're beginning to have a few men here and there. And so I think the reason why is linked back to parenting. You said something about, I say parenting, how the boys are raised as against how the girls are raised. There's a statement you made earlier when we started doing introduction. You said, boys are raised with the mindset that, boys don't cry. And so if a boy is crying, the average person says, why are you crying? Are you a girl? It sounds very simple, but that's a damaging mindset. Very, very damaging mindset. And I can see that Othuke's reaction, I know he totally agrees from his body language. And the implication of that, and that's just an example, it plays out in many ways. There are expectations that are placed on the boy child that are different from the girl child. Now, I know that some of the challenges with the girl child is that over the years is that the girl child has not been, most times is not exposed to as many opportunities as the boy child. All right. And so from that perspective, we've said, we need to give the girl child more opportunities. But there's an angle that we have not actually seen. So let me paint a scenario. I know that's probably not the case in our day and time, but back in the day, a couple, say they have let's say they have 5 children. I think the average then was 4 or 5 children. These days, people are just giving birth to 1 and saying that babies are expensive. But that's the topic for another day. So you have an average of, let's say, 4 kids. And let's say 1 is a boy, 3 are girls. And, the parents invest in the boy, invest in the sense that they send him to school, blah, blah, blah. They expect that he will be the savior. He will continue the family line and all of that. The girls are not given as many opportunities, which is a huge mistake, granted. But the implication of that is that there is a measure of pressure that the average boy is placed under from a tender age. And so the boy there are so many expectations and it's like a burden. It is implied, sometimes it is overtly, communicated. And then when the child is a child and has challenges that the child should have, one of the things that children do is that they cry. Even adults cry too. And so when you tell a boy child that, you know, you're a boy, you're not a girl, you shouldn't cry, what you are telling him, the implication is that you're telling him that he has to bottle up those emotions. He has to deal with himself, all right? You can't show people, because crying is a sign of weakness. Who says crying is a sign of weakness? And so he grows up with that mindset. And the mindset goes into adolescence. And then, you know, it goes into early adulthood. And then when it gets to the point where he's beginning to think about marriage, the first thing he's thinking about is the responsibility. And that translates into the traditional concept as against the original concept of what it means to be a husband and what it means to be a wife. A lot of people still have that traditional concept that a husband means breadwinner. But that is not true. That's not what it means to be a husband. And so the average guy knows that when he's about to get married, the first thing, the average, of course, there are exceptions, the first thing he's thinking about is, oh, I have to provide for the family, all right? He's not necessarily thinking, and when I say provide for the family, he's thinking more in terms of the financial aspect and the material aspect. And so, you know, he's thinking about the job, he's thinking about multiple sources of income. And whether you like it or not, that is some form of pressure. But I believe in God's original design, that's not how it's meant to be. A man and his wife, they are meant to be a team. They're meant to be able to work together. And so he should be able to share some of that burden. All right? He should know that he's not alone. Listen, there are many men that are alone. Internally, they are alone because they have been wired in such a way that from being from boyhood, they were expected to deal with stuff. They were expected to figure things out. And so if you say a boy should not cry, which is a natural response to, you know, the emotions and the pressure that a person might feel, what you're telling him is that he shouldn't talk. That's what it means. You're telling me he can't talk when he has certain challenges. And so he grows up with that mindset, and then is under a lot of pressure, and then he gradually begins to transfer that pressure or aggression to the nearest person, and most times it's his wife. See, many of the people that, and I'm not making excuses for, you know, the people that abuse their wives and all of that. There's no excuse for that. But most of them are victims of the same kind of abuse. It's just that the abuse was not as overt as it is when it comes to domestic abuse, like you have it. Because he's not being wired in a way to express the way he feels. He's not being engineered to communicate his feelings and to communicate the fact that I don't know how to do this. Show me how to do this. These are the interpretations of saying things like, you know, boys don't cry, but girls are allowed to cry. And so it's okay if the girl cries. The girl, you know, is happy to express, you know, this is how I feel and all that. And I know that's not always the case, you know, for girls. But, you know, on the average, you know, she can say this, I say that. But the boy feels like, oh, there's so many expectations. Oh, my father expects so much from me. But I have questions. And so he's afraid to ask those questions because he has been engineered in a way that he can't express himself. And so what happens is that the average boy develops a mechanism where he just has to figure things out. I just have to figure it out. And that translates to parenting. I believe that the biggest challenge with parenting is that a lot of people honestly do not know how. Honestly, don't even know how. And they just believe that they will wing it. How many institutions, formal institutions, actually prepare us for parenting? There are not many. There are not many. What can be more important than bringing a child into this world and raising a child? It's a huge responsibility. I'm probably a professional, and in advocacy, there is what we call behavioral change communication. It's a 7-step process, beginning from, you know, a person being unaware to becoming aware, to becoming concerned, becoming knowledgeable, and then, you know, ultimately developing consistent, you know, behavior, you know, in the line of what you want to achieve. But the 4th step in that cycle is actually being knowledgeable. It's not the final step, it's the 4th step. But the truth is that a lot of people don't even have the knowledge of what parenting is. A lot of people do not even understand the multiple roles that a parent should play. A lot of people don't understand that a father or a parent should be not just a provider, should be a promoter, like a coach at some point, should be a model, should be a prototype, you know, should be a protector, should be a pal, like a friend. He has to play multiple roles. And if you don't understand that, and if you don't understand the different phases of a child's development, that what a child needs in early, from 0 to 1 is different from what the child needs from 1 to 2. A cheerleader, thank you very much. Different from what the child needs from 3 to 5, or what the child needs from 5 to 7. And then you begin to, you're trying to do things during the adolescent phase of the child that you should have done when, they were preteens. And then they say, oh, mess. So a lot of people honestly do not have that knowledge. And let me buttress, some of the things that Othuke said about coaching and parenting. Both of us have spoke about, some of the things that, decisions that we took. 2013 was the first time I really became intentional about parenting. I got married in 2014. And so 2013, of course, and I'd read a few things here and there, but 2013 was the first time I really dawned on me that you're about to get married, all right? And you're going to be a father. And I started reading materials. One of the first people I started reading was Miles Monroe, and I was shocked. I was shocked at the things that I saw because there was no human being that told me these things. Honestly speaking, as much as, I believe that my parents did a decent job, we didn't have conversations that we should. And you can't, parenting, a lot of parenting has to do with having conversations. You have to have conversations with your kids. But the truth is that a lot of people don't know how. And so there is a need to learn how to do it, which is why platforms like this are extremely important. Ask the average man or even the average parent, in a year, how many hours do they devote to becoming better parents? And you'll be amazed at what you get. And so it starts by creating awareness about the importance of parenting. You can't just wing parenting. You don't just, we figure it as we go. No, there has to be an intentionality there. And so back to your question, I believe that the average boy has been raised under pressure and be taught not to express emotions. And so he has a lot of questions, but he has to figure it out. And so some of those pressure plays out in addiction, because when you're under pressure, sometimes it translates into having coping mechanisms. And for some people, it's pornography. For some people, it is one form of addiction or the other. And when they find somebody that they can talk to that probably gets the pressure they are under, if that person is not a good influence, it escalates the matter. And so the average boy is put under a lot of pressure, is not taught exactly how to go about what is expected to achieve, and is not taught to be expressive. We have to reverse that cycle. I can go on till 11, but let me stop here.